The day before our wedding, my fiancé, in order to help his first love avoid a blind date arranged by her family, actually agreed to have a fake marriage with her. They not only took wedding photos but also prepared to hold a grand wedding. I looked at the two of them in the photos and calmly broke up with him, but he scolded me for being petty. It's just a favor, and nothing happened. How can you be so selfish? If your ex needed help, I would agree too. Later, I turned around and married his sworn enemy. He then fell to his knees, crying and asking me, "Your marriage is fake, right?" I smiled and kissed my groom, then showed my marriage certificate with a flip of my hand. Sorry, but we really got the certificate. Today was supposed to be the day that Julian and I had agreed to take our wedding photos together, but he suddenly disappeared again. Under the urging look of the photographer's anxious eyes, I was so worried that I called Julian countless times, but no one answered all the time. In fact, this situation had been going on for nearly a month. It was supposed to be our wedding, but I was the only one who was busy and worried about it. Julian always said that he was extremely busy, so busy that I couldn't even see his shadow. He even refused to tell me what important thing it was that made him not care about his own wedding. I had been anxiously contacting friends, hoping to learn Julian's whereabouts from them or that he could return one of my calls. However, I saw his photos in a friend's WeChat moments, and I was so shocked that my heart almost stopped beating. In the photos, Julian and a woman in a pure white wedding dress with a sweet smile were hugging each other tightly. Scrolling down further, the two of them had various poses in the photos, shaking hands, looking at each other affectionately, and even the moments of playing and joking around were captured. My heart felt as if it was being tightly grasped by an invisible hand, and my brain was buzzing. The pictures on the phone screen were extremely dazzling. I was no stranger to this woman in the photos. She was Vivian, Julian's childhood sweetheart who grew up with him. They had always had a good relationship. Whenever Vivian had something, she always asked Julian for help at the first time. Even her WeChat was added by me for Julian. But I never expected that the two of them, who were like brothers and sisters in Julian's words, would now appear intimately in the same set of wedding photos. Vivian also added an ambiguous caption, "My Mr. Tang." Just as I was in a daze, I suddenly received a voice message from Julian on my phone. "Evelyn, there's a sudden emergency at my company and I can't leave. Today is the day to take wedding photos, right? You go ahead and take them first. I'll come to you when I'm done. Love you." At the end of the voice message, if you listened carefully, you could still hear Vivian calling his name. I really couldn't understand how Julian could take wedding photos with another woman while calmly saying the words, "Love you." When people are extremely angry, they become surprisingly calm instead. Soon, I inferred from the set of photos posted by Vivian that their shooting location was at Laojun Mountain. So I drove to Laojun Mountain and sure enough, I saw Julian and Vivian not far away, dressed in formal attire and posing for the photographer. They hugged each other intimately without any scruples, as if they were the real couple. Every time I took a step closer, I could see Julian's smile on his face becoming clearer. Suddenly, Julian quickly loosened his hand that was around Vivian's shoulder and stared straight in my direction. His face instantly turned pale. "Evelyn, why are you here? Weren't you supposed to be taking wedding photos?" I carefully examined the gorgeous wedding dress on Vivian and couldn't help but tease, "No wonder you didn't have time to take our wedding photos. It turns out you were too busy with this." Julian obviously heard my sarcasm and frowned slightly. "Evelyn, Vivian and I are just having a fake marriage. Do you have to be so sarcastic?" He walked forward, naturally took my hand, and his tone softened a bit. "It's just that Vivian's family is pushing her hard, and she doesn't want to go on blind dates, so she had to ask me for a favor. As her brother, since she wanted to take wedding photos, such a small request, of course I couldn't refuse her. We're just taking a few wedding photos and having a fake wedding, and it'll be over soon." My ears could hardly believe these words. I suddenly shook off his hand. "What did you say? You're still planning to have a wedding with her?" Julian was startled by my action and staggered back 2 steps, his face turning pale at once. Vivian quickly stepped forward, took his arm, and glared at me unkindly. Why did you push Julian, brother? I narrowed my eyes and coldly retorted, is it any of your business? Enough. Julian stood in front of Vivian, with his brows tightly furrowed. Evelyn, Vivian is my good friend and also my relative. I've always regarded her as my sister. Could you please be more polite when you speak? Besides, I'm just helping out, and nothing happened. Do you have to make such a fuss? The anger in my heart couldn't be restrained. We're getting married soon. Today was supposed to be the day for us to take our wedding photos, but you're taking photos with another woman. Even you're planning to have a formal wedding. And now it's me who's making a fuss. Instead of showing any sign of apology, Julian said righteously, is there anything wrong with that? If your ex or your old flame encountered such a special situation and needed help, I would support you too. As soon as he finished speaking, Vivian stepped out and gave me a meaningful smile. Julian probably hasn't told you yet. I'm not only his friend who grew up with him but also his first love. If I really wanted to get back together with him, you wouldn't have a chance at all. So don't worry. If there was really something between us, it would have happened long ago. Since it's a fake marriage, don't take it so seriously. I looked at Julian in disbelief, feeling as if my heart was being stabbed by a knife. Julian, if this is your value, there's nothing left for us to continue. Julian jumped up in anger and angrily pointed at my nose and shouted, are you threatening me with our marriage now? Evelyn, why are you so petty? I didn't say another word. I just calmly took off the engagement ring on my finger and threw it hard down the mountain cliff right in front of him. Once, when I was at the lowest point in my life, it was Julian who accompanied me through that difficult time. At that time, I was studying abroad. My grandfather suddenly had a heart attack, and I couldn't make it back in time to see him for the last time. If it hadn't been for Julian, my pen pal, who constantly comforted and encouraged me with his warm words, I really didn't know if I would have been trapped in remorse and decadence and unable to extricate myself. After returning to China, Julian recognized me. Naturally, we became friends and eventually got together. During the 3 years of our relationship, although he often had a bad temper and repeatedly challenged my bottom line, considering that there were no fundamental mistakes, I tried my best to tolerate him. However, I never expected that he would stay with his first love without any scruples under the pretext of being brothers, and even hold a wedding for her and hurl abuse at me. Gradually, I couldn't figure out how the current Julian could be so different from the boy who had touched me with his delicate words back then. Evelyn, don't drink too much. Maxwell snatched the wine glass from my hand and let out a long sigh. I really didn't expect Julian to do such a thing. I've long felt that something was wrong with his so-called tough girl friend named Vivian. I didn't expect there was such a relationship between them. TSK. I've already broken up with Julian. Don't call me that in the future, I said with a frown. Maxwell swallowed a mouthful of wine in silence and still couldn't help asking, but after the news of your marriage spread, the stock prices of both your families have been rising rapidly. Now that you suddenly announce the cancellation of the engagement, how are we going to explain it to the higher-ups? I gave him a cold glance. Since when did you also think that interests are more important than principles? That's what you say, but... Maxwell heaved a heavy sigh. Suddenly there was a commotion in the crowd not far away. I narrowed my eyes and saw a handsome, thin and tall boy arguing with another man. Evelyn, isn't that Gabriel? That's, ugh. Julian's sworn enemy. Maxwell pointed there and said. It was indeed Gabriel. The argument between him and that man had become heated and it seemed that they were about to come to blows. Gabriel tightly grasped the man's sleeve and shouted, you took pictures under someone's skirt secretly, and you still think you're right? Hand over your phone. Where did this lunatic come from? Get lost. The man struggled to break free but Gabriel held him firmly. Even if you don't admit it, it doesn't matter. I've already called the police. Just wait. Hearing that the police had been called, the man was obviously panicked. Mind your own business. You're asking for trouble, right? He suddenly swung his arm and pushed Gabriel hard to the ground. Then he took out a butterfly knife from his bag. Maxwell grabbed his wrist before the knife fell. I also wanted to go forward to help but almost got my arm scratched by him. Seeing this, Gabriel quickly got up and kicked the knife out of his hand. I cheered loudly from the side, "Well done. Catch him. Don't let him run away." At this time, the sound of sirens rang out. Gabriel and I escorted the man to the police station. After verification, he turned out to be a habitual delinquent. When we came out after finishing the record, it was already past midnight. Oh no. Gabriel immediately panicked when he looked at his phone. "What's the matter?" I asked. "It's already early morning. I have to hurry home to feed my cat." "Evelyn, thank you today. I'll definitely come to thank you in person another day." Gabriel hurriedly said goodbye and ran to the roadside to hail a taxi. But it was so late that there were no taxis at all, so I stopped him. "It's so late. There are no taxis. Come with us." Gabriel looked at me and a hint of hesitation flashed in his eyes. I knew what he was worried about. After all, he and Julian had always been at odds. Naturally, he had to avoid suspicion considering my relationship with Julian. "I've already broken up with Julian," I said calmly. Gabriel's eyes widened instantly. "Brother, sister, it's almost 1 o'clock. Are you coming or not?" Maxwell urged. After hesitating for a moment, Gabriel still chose to get in the car with us. The three of us sat silently in the car and didn't say a word all the way. It was so quiet that you could even hear a pin drop. The atmosphere was so awkward that it seemed you could squeeze water out of it. Gabriel lowered his head and swiped his finger on the phone screen to ease the embarrassment. Suddenly, he jerked his head up and took a quick look at me. Then, as if he was scared by something on his phone, his eyes widened round and his brows unconsciously knitted into a knot. When he saw my puzzled look, he quickly turned his phone over and hid it, just shaking his head and saying, "It's nothing. Really nothing." I sent Gabriel home and then went back to my own place. As soon as I turned on my phone, several messages from Maxwell popped up. "What on earth is Julian up to? Is he deliberately trying to annoy you?" "Evelyn, you're right. Compared with principles, interests are nothing. Julian has really refreshed my outlook on life this time." Now I understood what was wrong with Gabriel in the car. Julian had posted his and Vivian's wedding photos on WeChat Moments, blatantly, and even added captions, indirectly taunting me. Some people are so petty. When a good brother is in trouble, why can't I step in and take a few photos temporarily? I wasn't interested in delving deeper into whether Julian did this out of spite or for other reasons, but this incident reminded me that I should quickly block both of them on WeChat. The next day, a rapid knock on the door woke me up. Outside the door, Gabriel was carrying a big bag of groceries. With a smile on his lips, I said I'd come to thank you in person. I didn't break my promise, did I? He walked into the kitchen so naturally, rolled up his sleeves and began to wash the vegetables and pick them. His skillful movements showed that he was someone who often did housework. I watched his busy figure in the kitchen and suddenly realized that this guy was warm-hearted and kind. He wasn't as bad as Julian had described. A sumptuous meal was laid on the table. After my persuasion, Gabriel stopped what he was doing and brought out the last bowl of soup. "Come on, quickly taste my cooking." I picked up a piece of tofu and put it in my mouth. It was so tender that I hardly needed to chew it. I looked up and saw Gabriel resting his cheeks on his hands, looking at me worriedly. I thought for a moment and guessed his intention. "What's the matter? Are you afraid that I won't eat properly because of the breakup?" Gabriel nodded without any concealment. I was about to tease her with a smile when I was so shocked by his next words that I almost spat out the tofu. "Evelyn, why don't we get married?" After saying this, Gabriel blushed first. He simply closed his eyes and went on in a rush, "My family is no worse than Julian's at all. Our marriage can also be a powerful alliance, and it's also good for the company. Besides, Julian has treated you like that. Why are you so stubborn? You might as well let it go earlier and find someone truly suitable." Gabriel's eyelids fluttered slightly. When he opened his eyes again, there was determination in them. "Evelyn, I'm serious. I hope you can think it over carefully." Under his eager gaze, somehow, I nodded as if possessed. He seemed afraid that I would go back on my word and directly suggested that we go to get the marriage certificate right away. However, adults always have to consider things from multiple aspects. But thinking about it from another angle, if we got married now, I would indeed take advantage of him to a certain extent, and it would only be beneficial and harmless to the company's development. So, I made an appointment with Gabriel downstairs in the company and went straight to the Civil Affairs Bureau. Just as we were about to set off, Julian's annoying voice rang out from behind. "Evelyn." He walked closer with an ugly look on his face. "You've actually blocked me?" The next moment, when the corner of his eye caught sight of Gabriel's hand holding my arm, he was stunned at first and then his anger flared up completely. "Gabriel, how dare you seduce my fiancé?" I quickly shielded Gabriel behind me and looked coldly at the furious Julian, reminding him coldly, "Julian, we've already broken up." Julian looked at me in disbelief, his eyes turning red. "Evelyn, are you trying to annoy me by teaming up with him, and acting with him to deceive me? You're overthinking it. I'm planning to marry him." After I said this, Julian's face obviously darkened, as cold as frost. "Stop throwing your tantrums like a spoiled princess. You should know when and where it's appropriate. It was okay that you threatened me with canceling the engagement last time, but now you're even saying that you're going to marry someone else? Evelyn, you're an adult. Can you stop playing such childish games that make people laugh?" When he got excited, there was a bit of ridicule and contempt in his expression. Over the years, Julian had always been the same. Relying on my tolerance and deep affection for him, he presumptuously believed that I couldn't leave him. No matter how excessive his behavior was, I could only choose to endure it silently. Now that I had chosen someone else, in his opinion, this undoubtedly became a means of being spiteful and deliberately provoking him. Who's more childish? "Julian, how dare you come here to laugh at others?" Gabriel stepped forward bravely, facing Julian directly, and instantly regained the haughty, cold, and full of fight kingly posture he had that night in the bar. "Your values always surprise me. You clearly had a fiancé but still went to take wedding photos with your ex-girlfriend. And afterwards, you could put these photos on social media without changing your expression. And you still have the nerve to say that others are petty. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at by everyone for making a fool of yourself every day?" Julian snorted coldly and retorted, "Gabriel, stop pretending to be a saint here. Just admit it. You clearly know that you can't compare to me, so you came up with underhanded ways to compete with me for a woman? I advise you to save your energy. Evelyn can't leave me. Her feelings for me won't change just because of a few words of yours. You don't deserve Evelyn." Gabriel narrowed his eyes, and his expression became serious. "Julian, you're just taking advantage of Evelyn's generosity and testing her bottom line again and again to show off your superior sense of superiority, but you never consider her feelings. Someone as half-hearted and fickle as you doesn't deserve to be loved at all. It's true that a few words of mine can't easily shake your 3-year relationship. You're right about that. But I believe that since Evelyn has already seen your true face and decided to break up with you, she will never go against her principles and come back to you again." Gabriel deserved to be Julian's old rival. With just a few words, he left Julian speechless and also made him burn with anger. What surprised me was that Gabriel was so indignant about the extremely unbalanced relationship between Julian and me. Even more unexpectedly, he could understand me so deeply. "Let's go." Gabriel finally glanced at Julian with disdain, took my hand, and left without looking back. His hand was unusually warm. Being held by him like this, I couldn't help but look forward to all the unknowns that we would face together in the future. Without saying a word, Gabriel dragged me all the way to the door of the Civil Affairs Bureau in a hurry. He raised his head, with a faint smile on his face and expectation in his eyes. "One last confirmation. Don't tell me you regret it." I didn't say a word either. I just held his hand tightly and walked in with big strides. But when it came to taking the wedding photo for the marriage certificate, Gabriel suddenly became nervous. The photographer patiently guided, groom, smile, and make your expression more natural." Gabriel stood beside me, his fingers intertwined uneasily, and his breathing seemed a bit rapid. "Are you nervous?" I asked softly. He pursed his lips like a child who had made a mistake, nodded slightly, his eyes flickering, and whispered, "I'm just afraid that you're just acting on a whim and will regret it in the future and blame me for pestering you." His voice was as thin as a mosquito's and it was almost inaudible later. I gently separated his tightly clenched hands, wrapped them tenderly in my palms. And I said to him firmly, "You're so nice that I'm willing to marry you from the bottom of my heart." This isn't just polite talk. It's my truest thought at the moment. The corners of Gabriel's eyes flushed, and his face showed both joy and a bit of grievance, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help rising. With the click of the camera, his smile was frozen on our marriage certificate. Regarding the wedding, Gabriel took care of every detail personally. Although everything had already been prepared properly, he still couldn't set his mind at ease. This happened to coincide with what I was good at. No one knew the details of this wedding better than I did. Every day when we got home from work, we would discuss every aspect of the wedding carefully. Surprisingly, Gabriel's and my aesthetics matched so well that we often chose the same plan without prior agreement. I had been so busy during this period that it wasn't until I was cleaning up my phone that I was surprised to find that Julian had sent me dozens of messages in just a few days. In fact, they were multimedia messages. In each of those multimedia messages, there were all photos of him and Vivian traveling around, enjoying the mountains and waters. The two of them were smiling brightly and their behavior was as intimate as before. However, all of this could no longer stir up the slightest ripple in my heart. Looking back on it, it seemed rather ridiculous. I had blocked Julian on WeChat, so he sent these through text messages on purpose to provoke me? I casually flipped through a few of them. Even though their journey seemed wonderful, it was dull and uninteresting to me. When I put away my phone, I simply added Julian's number to the blacklist as well. Before the wedding officially began, I planned to take Gabriel to visit my dear grandma. Since Grandpa passed away, Grandma's health had been deteriorating, and now she almost lived in the hospital all year round. What worried her the most at present was probably my marriage. Grandma knew all about my engagement to Julian and the wedding preparations before. Now, with this sudden change, it was only proper to tell her about it in advance. However, I never expected that when I walked into Grandma's ward with Gabriel, I unexpectedly ran into Julian, whom I hadn't seen for a long time. He was leaning against the bedside, slightly sideways, whispering to Grandma. When he saw me enter, a glint of light flashed in his eyes. "Evelyn, you're here." He enthusiastically stood up and greeted me in the affectionate tone we used when we were in a relationship, as if all the twists and turns that had happened during those days had never existed. Even when he caught a glimpse of Gabriel behind me, Julian didn't show any flaw. His smile just paused slightly, and then he walked towards Gabriel naturally and familiarly, opening his arms. "Gabriel, long time no see. How have you been recently?" Before Gabriel could reply, Julian turned his head and excitedly introduced to Grandma. "Grandma, this is Gabriel, my best friend from college. I mentioned that you weren't in good health, and he's always kept it in mind. Look, he came to see you on his own. Our Gabriel is so sweet and sensible. If you know any nice girls here, remember to introduce them to him." Julian held Gabriel's hand and chatted with Grandma enthusiastically, hardly giving us a chance to interrupt. I didn't want to argue with him in front of Grandma, but Julian didn't even seem to give me a chance to formally introduce Gabriel. Seeing that he had no intention of stopping, I frowned and directly grabbed his arm. "Let's talk outside." Although Julian was reluctant, I still dragged him out of the ward, and he didn't forget to turn around frequently to promise Grandma that he would come back soon. "What are you doing?" I asked. "What am I doing? I should ask you what you're doing." Outside the ward, Julian rubbed his wrist and said with a look of grievance, "Why did you block my phone number? And now you're bringing him to see Grandma. Evelyn, even if you want to vent your emotions, there should be a limit. What's the point of you doing this? Aren't you afraid that I'll really get angry? I'm not acting with you." Julian, for the last time, we've broken up. Don't come to me again. And soon Gabriel and I will have our wedding. It's only natural for us to come to visit Grandma together now. It's none of your business. Are you confused? Finally, Julian took off his disguise and stopped playing the victim. He angrily began to question me. Isn't it just because of that incident of taking wedding photos with Vivian? Just for such a trifle, you deliberately found the person I disliked the most to take revenge on me? Let me tell you, you've miscalculated. That man Gabriel is so dissolute. He's not as good as me at all. Evelyn, you probably don't know yet. Vivian, whom you dislike the most, also had a relationship with Gabriel a long time ago. He not only lured Vivian but also toyed with her feelings and finally abandoned her. Nobody in our circle looks up to such behavior. Don't think that Gabriel is happy to play this new game with you now. When he gets tired of it, within a week, he'll dump you just like he dumped Vivian. Julian's eyes were like searchlights, tightly fixed on my face, as if he wanted to catch even the slightest sign of disappointment in Gabriel from my expression. So, what exactly is your purpose in saying these things now? My tone was full of indifference. Let's put the truth aside for now. Even if Gabriel is as bad as you described, can it change the pain you once brought me? Julian, to my surprise, even today, you still think that I broke up with you because of a momentary impulse or that I found someone new? Do you really not understand, or are you deliberately avoiding the reason why I gave up our relationship? I paused for a moment and continued. I don't know everything about what happened back then, but from what I know about Gabriel, he is a sensible person who knows his limits. Even if Vivian was his ex-girlfriend, so what? At least he knows how to keep a distance from the past and won't do anything out of line. Shouldn't you examine yourself first before you belittle others? Julian's breathing became rapid. He suddenly grabbed my sleeve and asked in a trembling voice, "Why are you willing to believe him but not me? We were together for a whole 3 years, Evelyn. You're so strange to me now. You would never have treated me like this before." I unfastened his fingers that were tightly clasped on my hand one by one and replied in a cold tone, "Yes, we were indeed together for 3 years, but it doesn't mean that our affairs should involve my grandma and Gabriel. So, please, whatever you have in the future, come to me directly. Don't use them as your targets anymore. Preferably, we'll never see each other again. Remember, we've broken up." Julian stood there in a daze. A few seconds later, he blinked his eyes, shook his head constantly, and murmured "no" over and over again. But everything had already become a foregone conclusion. When I returned to the ward, Gabriel and Grandma were chatting animatedly, as if they regretted not having met each other earlier. As soon as Grandma saw me enter the door, she immediately beckoned me to sit down beside the bed. She held my hand with one hand and Gabriel's with the other, her eyes shining with excited light. "Gabriel has told me everything. Grandma understands that you suffered a lot of grievances when you were with Julian. But I didn't expect that you two could get together. It's really wonderful and makes Grandma so happy." I was a bit puzzled and looked at Gabriel. "Do you know Grandma?" I remembered that Grandma had mentioned that in the days after Grandpa passed away, she was in a trance all day long. Besides, my parents were busy with work and couldn't be around often, and I was far away abroad. At that time, Grandma happened to meet a kind-hearted child in the park. After learning about Grandma's situation, he patiently comforted her. He also often brought some interesting things to make Grandma happy and helped her gradually get out of the gloom of losing a loved one. Unexpectedly, that person turned out to be Gabriel. As time went by, Grandma gradually walked out of the shadow of Grandpa's passing, but Gabriel went abroad. Now both of them were overjoyed. Grandma kept chatting with us until dusk before reluctantly letting us leave. On the way home, Gabriel was different from his usual self. He was no longer lively and talkative but unusually quiet. At first, I thought he was just tired, but seeing his pursed lips, I couldn't help asking in the end, "What's the matter? Did something happen?" Gabriel hesitated for a moment and finally said, "Just now. Did Julian tell you a lot of bad things about me?" I nodded by default. After I returned to China and met Julian, I learned that he had a sworn enemy. It was said that the two of them used to be as close as brothers, but I don't know when they fell out with each other. At that time, Gabriel wasn't in Haicheng, and all my impressions of him came from what Julian said, so naturally there were few good words. Later, Gabriel returned to Haicheng. Although our two families had business interactions, under the influence of Julian, Gabriel and I just nodded politely when we met. It wasn't until recently that I really got to know Gabriel. Only then did I realize that he was a person who dared to love and hate and acted with integrity, completely different from the despicable person described by Julian. That's not true. Gabriel eagerly defended himself. I knew he would definitely slander me behind my back. Do you know that I once regarded Julian as my best brother and we could talk about everything? Until I found out that he approached me just because of jealousy. When I was in the campus radio station, he forced his childhood sweetheart to join in and asked me to take good care of her. Considering my relationship with Julian, I did take good care of his childhood sweetheart. As a result, Julian bit the hand that fed him and spread everywhere that I had snatched his girlfriend away and even made up that we were already in a relationship. I didn't accept such false accusations and immediately drew a clear line from them, but the rumor became that I was fickle and played with people's feelings. It was Julian who set me up and made me isolated in the circle. I really couldn't bear it, so I finally chose to go abroad. Gabriel sighed with a low voice. Looking back now, I was really too weak at that time. After hearing what Gabriel said, I was shocked. Who could imagine that the sunny and cheerful Gabriel now had gone through such hardships before? I couldn't even imagine how he managed to get through it alone at that time. But all of this really seemed like something Julian would do. I asked, was the girl who framed you named Vivian? Yes, that's the one who took wedding photos with him. Gabriel paused for a moment and wrinkled his nose. I just think that since we're married, I should hold nothing back from you. But whether you believe it or not is up to you. I believe you. I didn't hesitate at all and then gently patted Gabriel's head. I just feel sorry for you. You've suffered a lot. Since I made it clear to Julian in the hospital, he really disappeared from my life. And the wedding of Gabriel and I was getting closer day by day. In front of our parents, we had already made everything clear long ago. The two families got together and had a lively meal. Gabriel's parents looked at me with satisfaction in their eyes. It was the same with my parents. The dinner table was filled with a harmonious and happy atmosphere. When it was time to leave, the elders were still reluctant to part. On the wedding day, Maxwell showed up before dawn, dressed handsomely as a groomsman. He grinned at Gabriel and said jokingly, "Gabriel, happy wedding. Let's make a deal. You give me a big red envelope, and then I'll try harder to find the bride's shoes and take your wife home earlier." I smiled and kicked him. Come on. Whose friend are you exactly? Just as we were talking, there was a sudden noise outside the door. I went out to have a look and unexpectedly found the person I least wanted to see, Julian. I hadn't seen him for a while, and he looked extremely tired, with heavy dark circles under his eyes and a scruffy beard, but he was still trying to perk up and shouting something. The security guards were tightly blocking him. "Sir, you can't go in without an invitation. Are you blind? This is my wedding. It's prepared for me. It's been in preparation for half a year." Julian was arguing with the security guards. As soon as he saw me coming, he immediately shouted excitedly, "Evelyn, quickly tell these blind guys that I'm the protagonist today. I've decided that I won't have any more contact with Vivian. The person I want to marry is you. I came here specially today to marry you." I was no longer surprised by Julian's various outrageous behaviors. Although it was within my expectation, I didn't want any unexpected troubles at the wedding. I calmly looked at Julian and ordered the security guards, "This person is emotionally unstable. Don't let him in." As soon as I said this, Julian's momentum instantly weakened by half, and he begged in a trembling voice, "Evelyn, forgive me. I'm really wrong this time. I want to be good with you." I didn't pay any attention to him and just gave the security guards a look. Gabriel also heard the commotion and rushed over hurriedly, with his tie not even tied properly. Even so, Julian stared at Gabriel fixedly. Suddenly, he fell to his knees and burst into tears, sobbing and asking me, "You won't forgive me just because of him, right? What's so good about him? How can he compare to me? Why are you marrying him? Your marriage is fake, right?" Gabriel didn't care about his tears. Pointing at Julian with his finger, he said sternly, "Julian, if you dare to ruin my wedding, I'll never let you off." Looking at Gabriel's angry look, I found it especially cute. I involuntarily turned my head and kissed him on the cheek, then said to Julian with a light smile, "Sorry, I'm serious about this." Julian was crying with tears all over his face. "Why? Evelyn, you can't marry him. Clearly, you love me the most." I didn't respond to his words and didn't show him any mercy either. I directly asked the security guards to escort him out. Julian's sudden appearance was just a little episode, and we didn't take it too seriously. After all, in the hearts of Gabriel and I, the wedding itself was the most important thing. When the wedding officially began, watching Gabriel walking slowly towards me with a bouquet of flowers in his hands, my eyes became a bit moist. This was the purest form of marriage in my mind, with loyalty, trust, and deep love. When we exchanged rings, I mouthed to him, "Thank you." Gabriel understood and gave me an indulgent smile. After the wedding ended successfully, Gabriel and I started our honeymoon trip. Our footprints spread all over various places, and we enjoyed the sweet time that belonged only to us. During these days away from the hustle and bustle, the relationship between Julian and Vivian heated up rapidly, and they even announced their engagement publicly and ostentatiously. However, this high-profile behavior didn't last long. Their relationship soon broke down because of Vivian's infidelity. It was said that Vivian was fickle and betrayed Julian. Unfortunately, Julian witnessed it with his own eyes. I learned about these pieces of gossip by accident, thanks to Maxwell's gossipy mouth. When we came back from our honeymoon and got home, Gabriel was busy unpacking the luggage in the room and asked me to open the windows to let in some fresh air first. From a distance, I noticed a huddled figure at the door of our house. So I went out to take a closer look and found it was Julian. As soon as he saw me, his lips puckered up with grievance at once. He grabbed my sleeve and said incoherently, "Evelyn, you're finally back. You don't know that when you were away, they all bullied me and laughed at me. I only have you left now. Come back to me, okay? Please." I gently pulled my hand away, and my voice was calm and resolute. "Julian, it's time for you to wake up. I'm already married, and I love my husband deeply. So what? People can get divorced even after getting married. Evelyn, even if you don't care about the 3 years we spent together, don't you forget who was always with you during the toughest time abroad? Now I need you. How can you just abandon me like this?" Julian's words made my thoughts involuntarily go back to the gloomy days not long after Grandpa passed away. It was indeed his handwritten letters that made me regain my courage to face life. However, the Julian in front of me now was completely different from the one in my memory. Nonsense. Gabriel appeared beside us at some point and angrily reprimanded Julian. "Julian, no wonder you were so eager to push me aside back then. So it wasn't just out of jealousy. You wanted to replace me and pretend to be the one who wrote those letters to Evelyn, right?" Gabriel's words were like a bolt of lightning, instantly cutting through the fog in my heart and clearing up my confused thoughts. Gabriel walked up to me and continued, "Evelyn, do you remember that I mentioned that Julian and I used to talk about everything? It was at that time that he learned about the fact that I wrote letters to you. But I never expected that he would have his eye on you so early. Even more unbelievable is that he took advantage of the fact that I wrote to you in my name to morally blackmail you." The complicated yet logical truth behind this shocked me deeply. Facing Gabriel, my feelings became even more complicated. Julian eagerly argued, "No, Evelyn, he's lying. Listen to me." I looked at Julian, and the last bit of warmth I had for him in my heart completely disappeared. "Julian, how long do you still want me to be with you? Let's just leave it at that. I don't want to remember you in the future and only have your lies in my mind." Julian's defense gradually weakened, and in the end, there were only the sobs of covering his face and crying and the intermittent, "I'm sorry." After getting home, Gabriel recounted the whole story of our correspondence in detail again. It turned out that not long after he was forced to go abroad, his email account was hacked. Even so, Gabriel still cared about me. After returning to China, although he found that I was already with Julian, he still chose to stand silently in the distance and protect me. As for why Gabriel was reluctant to disclose his identity after marriage, his answer was full of tenderness and apology. "Evelyn, I've always felt guilty about leaving without saying goodbye back then. And I was also afraid that mentioning the past would make you be reminded of those sad memories again when you saw something related. When you are deeply cherished by someone, he will carefully take care of everything about you and won't let you get hurt unnecessarily." Gabriel asked softly, "Evelyn, now that you know everything, what's on your mind?" "I'm grateful." I took Gabriel's hand and gently kissed the back of his hand. "I'm grateful to fate for allowing us to meet again and get to know each other anew. Fortunately, it's still not too late. Cherish the present, and we still have infinite possibilities."